Carol's right in the middle.
Carol, you're going to have to move.
Carol has to move. You have to move to
Do you want to move like right here? Right at that, right in the middle. Sitting in your way.
Yes, sir.
It's a corn drop.
It's going to be very short.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone for coming. This is a great group tonight because we're going to talk about the Seehausens who have been here, a part of Crete for so many years. And many of you have been part of the Seehausens, have worked for them, and friends with them, and everything. So it's wonderful that we have the three Seehausens here. Of course, everyone knows Don and Marion and Chuck here. And I'm probably, and Don, yes, there. There. I'm probably the newest person here to Crete, actually, I have to admit. But one of the first people I got to meet was Charlie Seehausen when he used to be at his grocery store. I think he had already given up management to it, but he used to come to the grocery store often. And he and I talked some, and then I got to talk to him at his home a couple of times too. He told me one story, and he told me never to tell another person about it, so I can't tell that. But he was very interesting and a wonderful person, and I remember him pointing out to me the sign at Seehausen's grocery store in Crete that says it's nice to be important, but it's even more important to be nice. And definitely I think we all have to agree with that, and we know how wonderful he was. As was Mildred, because many times we talk about Charlie Seehausen and don't recognize Mildred, you know, for all her achievements and what she contributed to the community too. I know for the Crete Women's Club she contributed an awful lot, and was it an Afghan, I think, for many, many a year she contributed to be raffled off at the Crete Art Fair too. So I'm going to leave it up to the three of you to start off talking about your parents, and if you can kind of start talking about when they first started. Don?
I had a suggestion. We have a printout of
Can you read, Donnie?
well, my wife's here.
We created a maze for you.
It's well written, and I don't know who wrote it. I just don't know, but it's very nice.
Got it upside down.
That's starts them out from scratch.
Okay. Wouldn't you like to read it?
Yes, I would.
Yes, that would be great. That would be
I was hoping you would.
Mr. Charles Seehausen Sr. Mr. Seehausen was born October 21st, 1895 in Crete, son of Henry and Emily Seehausen. Henry Seehausen was born in Crete, and Emily was born in Palatine, Illinois. Charles was one of 11 children. He went to school at Trinity Lutheran School in Crete, walking 4 miles to school every day. He told us it was 5. Mr. Seehausen worked on his father's farm east of Crete and helped further by taking care of 25 young steers for their neighbor, Mr. Day, who was yard master for the Chicago stockyards. They were Black Angus. He was proud of that. At the age of 21, he left home with $25 and a bus ticket to Royal Oak, Michigan. and made his home with his sister and her husband. He was fortunate to quickly find a job with the General Aluminum and Brass Foundry, but was unfortunate to ruin his brand new shoes on his first day of work. It was acid, I guess. During World War I, he was assigned to a Detroit factory which made ball bearings for the engines used in the Rickenbacker planes. At the end of the war, he entered a grocery store managing program run by the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company, AP, in Detroit. In October 1922, he was made store manager of a store on Chicago Road in South Chicago Heights. And in 1923, he was transferred to Crete, where he opened a new A&P store, which would be the one next to ours. No. On April 14th, 1923, that is 68 years ago, he married Mildred Sloventine of Chicago Heights. They had 3 children, Charles, Donald, and Marion, all, including Mrs. Seehausen, still reside in the town of Crete. In 1938, he opened his own store, starting as a meat market. Starting a meat market, and then adding groceries in 1942. Mr. Seehausen, with the help of his wife, 2 sons, and many loyal Crete employees, operated Seehausen Certified in Crete for 46 years. Mr. Seehausen established the Seehausen Memorial Scholarship Fund in 1962 in memory of his father. This fund still exists today. Mr. Seehausen received many awards. In 1967, he received a federal citation for cooperating with the Youth Opportunity Work Program, giving students jobs during vacations. In 1968, he was selected as Citizen of the Year by Crete Ambulance. In 1976, he was presented the Grocer Spotlight Award at the Illinois Food Retailers Association Convention. He was also a director of that organization. In 1978, he was named Crete Memorial Parade Grand Marshal. He was the founding director of the Crete Public Library and a director of the Bank Park Forest. Mr. Seehausen was a charter member and past president of the Crete Lions Club and a member of the Crete Chamber of Commerce. He was a church elder at Trinity Lutheran Church for more than 30 years. Mr. Seehausen died on August 14, 1986, at the age of 90. In his store hangs a sign that reads, "It is nice to be important, but it is more important to be nice." That is the way he ran the store and lived his life in our town of Crete. And that he did. There's a lot of stuff here that we like to look at, pictures, stuff.
I think that was written for when he was man of the year.
Could be, yeah.
I don't know who wrote it.
I don't either. It wasn't me.
It's written probably.
There's an obituary.
The thing was in it.
Obituary.
So how did your father come to change from the A&P to his own store?
I think it's a good
Do you
story.
know?
Really, isn't it, Charlie? How he got out of the A&P.
Oh, yeah, he ran the A&P in Crete, and all it had in it was vegetables, no fresh meat. So he got a butcher, Mr. What's his name, Robert? Mr. Sitting over on Park Street.
Before him.
No, it was a butcher from Moni or somewhere. Carson. Larry
That's right,
Carson.
Carson.
And he opened the meat market, and he ran it, while my father ran the other store. And things got to pick up, so they put in a few groceries, and Emmy Flickinger was the first clerk that my father hired. And I worked there a little while. And Al Stashke came afterwards and ran the meat market. First, my Uncle Ray ran it. After Mr. Carson, retired, then my Uncle Ray went in, and then my Uncle Ray went to Dixie Dairy, and And then Al Stashby came in. It was fun working with Al because the bookie was right next door. But that's how he started. But he did up in Detroit. He got into business with a fella that they started a small grocery store up there. That's how he started. And then from there he went to their training center and learned to be a manager. And he ran a store, and before he came to Crete, he ran one in Chicago Heights. I think it was 15th Street or 16th Street? 16th, way down there. And from there we moved to Joliet. We lived there a year. That was close to the prison. We're very familiar with the prison.
We had a brother Henry that was in the grocery business too, and he worked.
He had three brothers, and before he went into business for himself, he had, I don't know, kind of a breakdown, and he had to get out. He had to get out in the air. So he went to work for Dixie Dairy, who had a plant in Beecher right across from Pat Hack's. That was where first Dixie Dairy was. And he worked there for, I think, 3 years. I remember going on the route with him in the mornings. We had Moni and Goodman. That was just rough. But other than that, then he came back to the store. First he went in with John Petenbrink and worked in there a while. He did work for John Petenbrink in the looking bar.
When did it become Royal Blue?
When did it become Royal Blue? When they put the sign on it.
I have a calendar that says 1951, but I think it was before that.
It was, yes, because I worked for him, I started in 44 when Ralph went to services, when I worked for that Royal Blue.
Yeah.
And it had been there
Yeah.
I'm
a
sorry.
few years
I
ago.
forgot you.
Yeah.
So young looking.
Thanks.
I think it could have been like, say, 1937 or 38, because I went to school, high school in '39, and he already was there a couple of years. Charlie was working there. No, not then, a little later. But listen, there's one thing Charlie didn't tell you. My dad had a supervisor in A&P, remember that? That he gave him fits.
Mr. Brandmeier.
Yeah, Brandmeier, that's right. He couldn't do anything to please that guy. So one day, Dad locked the store, opened the transom, threw the keys in, and said, "Come and get your store." Yeah, that's probably it. That was funny.
So when was that he just did that, threw that in? I mean, then, in 1930s?
Oh, so,
I wasn't
It was the
there.
late 30s.
yeah, Skinny might know better than I do. Skinny is just down here. He could tell you, I don't know.
It was probably around 39, because I started in the A&P store with Charlie. Everybody called him Charlie. He wasn't Mr. Seehausen. He was just like one of us. And I was only a kid, and Charlie, that's who you worked for. But he got, like Donnie said, the one manager, the district manager, Mr. Brandmeier, you just couldn't do anything for him. He'd come in and he'd nitpick everything in the store, and Charlie got kind of fed up with it. But Charlie was an excellent manager. He could handle people, he could handle customers, and treat everybody real nice. And I think that's when Mr. Seehausen decided to go on his own. And he did so. I started in 1937, and I worked part-time before I graduated from Bloom, and then after I graduated, I worked full-time for him. This is post-Depression time. And we had people come in the store that were on relief, and they had you had to write down every grocery thing that they bought, and a lot of people would come in. They wanted tobacco or cigarettes or something like that, and you couldn't do it. and he tried to work me as a kid, and I said, go see Mr. Seehausen and see what he's got to say about it. But he is a wonderful man to work for, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people in here that will attest to that.
Very generous, very generous.
Just for curiosity's sake, how many people work for Mr. Seehausen?
That are here.
44.
That are here? That
I
are
worked
here?
for 2 years.
Well, my son Alan and Lori, Alan worked a good number of years for Seehausen.
That's right.
Lori, what did you tell me last night, 4 years?
I only worked 5, but I met him there, so that made it, you know, a marriage made it Seehausen.
If you want to listen to some of my story, I'd relate some of the things. Grocery store at that time was a lot different than the stores today. One of the things when, I don't care who first started in there, especially the young men, first job that you'd get was Mr. Seehausen would get 100-pound bag potatoes, and you would get a job, and they had a wire scoop like, and you'd put it in a paper bag and put 15 pounds of potatoes in there. That was a peck of potatoes. And we didn't have them in 10-pound bags like you have now.
The pecks,
They were pecks, yeah.
15 pounders.
The store was located where Spoolies are now, and I don't know, did anybody bring, I bought my Crete historical book. There's a picture of the interior of the store there. When you worked at the counter and people would come in, if they wanted a can of corn, you'd run over to the shelf across the way and bring it back, and then they said, well, I want a can of beans, so you go back over there again. It wasn't self-serve, you know. Only had two adding machines in the place and one cash register. I can relate some of the costs, and they stick in my mind real vividly. Candy bars were 3 for a dime. They were a lot bigger than they are now. Cigarettes were, name brand cigarettes were 2 packs for a quarter. Off brand were a dime. You could even buy little bags of tobacco. You could roll your own. We had Bull Durham and Golden Grain. They were a nickel a bag.
Paper bag,
Yeah.
wrapping.
Yeah, it had the cigarette paper in it, and we had candies beside the candy bar. There was a bulk candy on the left side when you came in. I remember one thing very vividly before I worked there. Kids would chip in and maybe with pennies, and we'd have a nickel, and somebody ride a bike uptown, and they'd get caramels. They were only 10 cents a pound, so you'd get a half a pound of them. Some were light colored, some were dark, and lived on the west side of Crete, and some of you people probably remember the Meeks family, Donald Meeks, who passed away in service. But they had a dog, pretty size dog by the name of Cracker, and us kids would chew some of those caramels, get them pretty well worked over, and we'd give one to Cracker, and she'd get her paw and try to get the caramel out of her thing. Bread was Seehausen, I mean not Seehausen, A&P had their own brand, which was Sunnyfield bread. Those were a nickel a loaf. We also handled, vendors came in, we had Silver Cup bread, and Schultz Bakery in Chicago, they serviced their store. Conrad, yeah, later on, you're right, Charlie, thanks. I know one time on a Sunday, Mr. Seehausen took some of the people that worked there. We went up to the Schultz Bakery in Chicago. The building is still there. It's on Garfield Boulevard or 55th Street. It's kind of neat to go through and see how they prepared the bread and everything. One of the things I remember going in, like you'd have to go in like yearly to get a tuberculosis test, and I think it gets a shot or something. I had a real bout of the flu, and I'd only been back to work a couple of days, and we were scheduled to go up to on Pershing Road, 39th Street, and they had a big warehouse there, and big open area, and I don't know, I got shot at sometime. I don't think I walked the distance from here to the wall. I went flat on my face. It just hit me after that. Charlie was really concerned, but there were nurses there and everything. We sold, besides groceries, like the boy, like they mentioned, we had no fresh meat in the store. We did have one refrigerated case that we kept cheese in and some lunch meats, and you could get sliced meat that way. I still remember Carol, Uncle Carl worked for Dixie Dairy Company, and he came with his little delivery truck, little white truck, and the name of it was, and I can still see the sign on the radiator, Divco. But Carl was really a neat guy. Everybody enjoyed him coming in. We got our groceries from, well, we'd get some from the Pershing warehouse in Chicago, and also the main groceries came from Gary. We called it Gary Warehouse. And one of the drivers that would come in, and when he was done offloading, when he was done, he would ask Charlie, he says, "Can I have a couple of eggs?" Mr. Seehausen took eggs. Farmers had chickens on their farm, and they'd collect the eggs, and basically they came into the store to trade on Saturday evenings. That was our busy time.
That was Everett's job, candling eggs, that's what.
A little light bulb, and you put an egg in there and see if there wasn't any life in it or anything. And well, they didn't have refrigeration. You can imagine what things were like. But we sold feed besides, and that historical book that shows the interior of the building, and there was a sign hanging down, and it had the prices of various feeds. We sold scratch feed, which was a kind of a brown feed for chickens, corn and stuff. And I can still remember bags of bran. Bran was not very heavy, but the bag was real bulky, and it was bigger than I was. We also, there were also cookie boxes off on the right-hand side when you come in. Bulk cookies, and hardly anything was packaged in those days. And I remember they just came out with puffed rice and puffed wheat. Came in a cellophane bag about that high and about that big around. The puffed wheat was a nickel bag, and the puffed rice was 2 for $15. And but it was a neat place to work. Had a kind of a storeroom in the back, and Charles could tell you one story, but we had 2 barrels of vinegar. One was a white vinegar, the other was a cider vinegar. I don't know, they probably won't going up to it, but I think they were horsing around back there one time. They broke the wooden spigot off the vinegar barrel, so we had vinegar all over the back.
Vinegar was on sale.
Charles, tell them the one about the syrup.
That's when Joe Bridget worked for us. He worked for me, yeah, he worked for us. But anyhow, we had a night light in the back. Had to turn it on at night. So we're all ready to go, and my dad said, "Oh, the light's not on." So Joe says, "I'll take care of it." So he goes back and couldn't quite reach it. So Carol's syrup came in a 10-gallon or 5-gallon can. He stood on that and flipped over, and we didn't get out there for an hour and a half. I used to get some good notes. You remember Mr. and Miss Oberlo? She couldn't spell very well. One day she wrote a note, and he would come in and get the groceries. And I got the note. It says, "One cornhole in a can." Now, what do you do? Yeah.
You should tell them about the time that my folks went away on vacation, and he ordered a carload of potatoes.
Potatoes.
On that story.
Seed potatoes, yeah.
Yeah, seed
And we were all through it, and I ordered all these seed. Oh, that's the first mistake I made. The second one was when I had to work in the car down on the track in the fall of the year when we got a whole car of Idaho potatoes and we sold them by the sack. We didn't come to the store, people came to the track and put them in the car. But we got rid of them sweet potatoes.
You had a lot of potatoes at home, we ate a lot.
That's why you like them.
Well, I was graciously invited over to Don and Peggy's the other night, and Marion and Charles and Don, we had a good time recalling some things. Charles was mentioning about Mr. Overlow. There was one fellow, I think he lived in Grand Park, and he could hardly speak any English, just kind of broken German. And I can still remember, and almost every time he came in, he would say, "Give me box of tapioca." He wanted a box of tapioca. One of the things, and Charles was mentioning about the syrup on the floor, about every other month or so on a Saturday night, we'd be open on Saturdays from 7 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. And Saturdays was a big day for us. And there were always a certain number of few people that at the last minute we'd close it, supposed to close at 9, and about 5 minutes to 9 they'd come with a great big order, and you'd have to get that out. But about every 2 months on a Saturday night we'd sweep the floor real good and get stuff off the floor, and Charlie would we sold motor oil in a 2-gallon square oblong container, and he put the motor oil on the floor, and then he'd swab that in, and that kept that floor real good. Yeah.
You know, one thing that you may not know, when when we were in the Army, all of us guys, the local ambulance, the Lions Club, they had a softball team, and they played other teams, and my dad played. And I couldn't believe it, because I never couldn't feature that. I couldn't see him play, and he was a pitcher. And they had a really good time with us. It was a high point for him.
When the farmers brought in their pigs, did they get paid in cash, or did they take it out of trade?
Pay them in cash, and most of them would just take it out in trade.
They bring in onions or corn, anything, tomatoes. He bought anything from the farm.
We used to get a lot of carrots when the racetrack season was on, because the horsemen would come in and buy carrots for their horses and everything. It was good time to work. I started out at 32 cents an hour. That was in 1937. But like I mentioned, that's post-depression. I was fortunate, and I worked 52 hours a week. I had enough time that I had generally Wednesday afternoons I had off 4 hours or something. And summertime we were closed on Thursday afternoons. All the stores were closed on Thursday afternoons.
Everybody went to the races.
Tell us about it.
Charlie got 25 cents allowance. He's 13 months older than I am. I got 15. I still resent that.
I have to relate one thing, and some of you have heard this story before, but it's true. This was in winter time, and we had a terrific ice storm. And Mr. Seehausen told me to go out and sweep the sidewalk and chip the ice away and stuff like that. There was nobody. There was not a car on Main Street. You couldn't see it. I'm out there working away, and I look to the south, and here's a figure coming up in the middle of the road. And I didn't pay much attention to it, and as it got closer, I looked, and I says, that was Miss Winter, who lived down in the next block. And she was walking down the middle of Main Street, and she had a toilet plunger in her hand. I wish I would have had a camera.
That was Lydia, she was the piano teacher. I took lessons from
One other thing that I remember, the village hall was just in the bank building, it was just to the right of the store. And Florence Swanson was village clerk. And I don't say she was the worst driver in Crete, but John Boyer was probably the worst. And, but she'd go home for lunch, you know, at noon, and she'd go out in her car. She had a Ford, V8 Ford, and she'd get out and she'd step on that gas and she'd rev it up and she'd let that clutch out all at once and she would just, she never learned how to drive, never. Some of you people would probably remember Florence once. Yeah, she lived on Columbia.
So do the three of you ever, or at least Chuck and Don, did you ever have another job, or you carried the store on to the day you retired?
Yeah, when I got, well, I worked at petrochemical. Yeah, I said, I'm not gonna work in the store, I don't like, well, I told him I didn't like cans. You see where they stuck me. No, I liked the meat furniture, I really did like that. It was a nice little friendly thing, you could talk to people. And I couldn't imagine that when I was in the Army, thinking that I was going to be a butcher. That ain't going to happen. But,
Well, you were supposed to go back to school and become a teacher, what happened?
yeah, well, I got drafted.
Oh.
I wonder how my dad got started in the grocery. Mr. Treebolt started in the grocery. That's where he brought the money to get in the grocery.
That's right.
I remember Charlie coming to see my dad one day. He was complaining he was giving too much to the government, so he wanted my dad to increase the interest. My dad objected. He says, "Now I'm going to have to pay it."
For a person who only had a 5th grade education, he really did rather well.
You said he had started in 1942 on his own. That was during the middle of the war. Did he have a hard time getting supplies to sell in the store at that time?
Well, after we.
Well, there were some rationed items that we had trouble getting. I don't think we had any other trouble getting shells.
When he built the store, that's when Don and I got out of service, and we could get, being in service, we could get building stuff to build the store. But I don't think there was any, only problem he had during the war was black market beef. We used to go out to the state line out here, or out looking, and he told us where to go, and we got beef that way. We brought it in the trunk of the car.
People would bring.
We didn't do that too often, though.
Farmers would bring veal, and, you know, we, Charlie had skinned
Charlie
it.
Poppy.
And, somebody back there turned us in, and they thought it was black market. Nice one. It's a surprise.
And when was the store that is presently Seehausen's, when was that built?
Four different times.
You could ask three people, you get three different answers. Pick one out. I really don't recall.
It was remodeled several times.
I worked on 3 remodeling or additions
Yeah, you
since
Always on the roof there, weren't you?
1952, somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
I remember
We had to
one,
move the house first. Stiggy's house was on the lot.
well, in the parking lot.
Yeah.
First you put an addition on and had the parking to the north,
Yeah,
Yeah.
then put another addition on.
I think it was 4 additions.
Four additions.
The hardware store, they had the bad basement, or whatever you want to call it. It was earth floor, you know. And I don't know, did they tore it down eventually?
I think when they put the addition on the north side of the store, I remember they had a little entertainment for people there. They had an elephant there. You could ride an elephant.
Seal test.
They only did that once, though. Yeah.
Marion mentioned the bad basement. we never had any way to refrigerate produce. We would get a 36, they would call it a 36 crate, there would be 36 heads of lettuce in there. And summertime, you know, we had no air conditioning in the store. In the middle of the summer, you lock the place up at night, you go in at 7 o'clock the next morning, it'd be just as hot as when you left it the night before. But vegetables didn't keep very well, you had to keep after them. After I'd worked there a while, Mr. Seehausen asked me if I'd take charge of the produce area, which I did. I ordered all the produce, and then I kind of graduated up. I did vacations when Mr. Seehausen went on vacation. I looked at the store as a vacation. I did one in Stager and a couple in Chicago Heights. There was about 6 A&P stores in Chicago Heights alone, and one just on Auto Boulevard, when it opened, and it was a more modern one. It was like you could use a cart and pick up your things and then check out. But I remember I used to come in to the store when the big store was going. On Christmas Eve day, I'd come in and talk to Charlie, reminisce a little bit. I said, Charlie, remember, you would really work at it, so we'd do $1,000 worth of business a week, and I think one week we did 1,200. He says, this is a long time ago already. He says, we'll do $25,000 today. I said, wow. And this is a number of years back.
When you talk about my mother, she really is the woman behind the man, because my mother was cookie in Chicago Heights Bank, and she did all the daily books. And I never forget one time we were out for dinner, my husband and I, with my folks, and my husband asked her, "You are getting paid for this work, aren't you?" She'd never been paid. So he said, "Oh gosh." So he sat down with my dad and told him instead of giving that money to the government, you should give it to your wife. So he did that, and Mother started getting better things in the house. She got new carpeting. My mother could add columns. I usually could just take a pencil up and down. And she also she liked sorting the coupons. And I would go over there and help her, and I didn't like it at all. But I felt sorry for her because she had this big round table and she had all these coupons on it. And they had to be in an envelope by a certain time, so you got your rebate, I guess. But we did do a lot of that, and but she was a very smart lady. Much smarter than the three of us put together.
The Crete Historical Society honored her at their tea, and I took her the invitation. And she enjoyed talking about the store and that, and how Charles slept in a drawer, I think, in the store. And she mentioned, did he play in a band? It seems she told me about him playing in a band.
In 3 parts,
There's a picture of that in that book, I think.
And she was proud of her long hair when she was a young girl.
Oh, yeah.
He played the drum.
She got a fur coat and got to cut her hair because she had a baby girl. And
And the store gave all our children a job.
That's right, yeah. Even mine. That's true.
One of the things that just came to mind in 1967 when we had the terrific snowstorm, blizzard, everything was shut down. And I wasn't connected with the store, but Mr. Seehausen arranged to get the food over to the train station and got it delivered down to Goodnow because they couldn't get in there for 2 days with any type of vehicle.
And Charlie even delivered with a snowmobile, didn't Charlie? Somebody, who was that?
We took also a gallon of milk to the train. They stopped the train and took us out. One thing that really teed me off one time, one guy said, "I'm sick, I can't come in." He lived out here on Money Road. And he didn't have any milk and bread or nothing, so put the order up. I carry it all the way out there, and here he's out there shoveling his driveway. Maybe teed off.
Did you ride home?
To take it back home?
I remember somebody coming in on a horse to get
Yeah.
the groceries that, from Seehausen's that's gone.
We used to take things out to Lancashire too, when it snowed and couldn't get in, right? Or in fact, Carl Treacle took milk out and made change for everybody and.
But Charlie delivered out there quite a bit during the war because we didn't, to say, they wouldn't have to spend the gas. We had a C card or whatever they call them, and we just load up the gas and Charlie take it with him.
I was in high school, I didn't get a car till after I was married to you, I don't understand.
We were delivering in a Packard, weren't we?
Yeah.
That's because you were buying cigarettes, that's what it was.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's up.
In the original folder, and I hate to tell you what it looks like,
Oh.
but it's there.
Well, Charlie always treated his employees real well, and I know there were people in here that went on cruises that he, yeah, 2 of them, yeah,
The convention.
yeah.
Oh, what about the cruises, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sent to home, school, us on cruises.
And his brothers and their wives.
Yeah, guys and their spouses, that was really,
Yeah.
that was really something.
He also paid people's taxes, they couldn't pay their taxes. They got personally
No,
no
I
back.
believe that, I don't remember.
And then when people would wanna come and charge and didn't have any money, and you know, and he'd look and he'd say, kids gotta eat. That was his favorite saying, the kids gotta eat.
Well, he'd do that when he managed the A&P store, that he would have little tabs on the side for people, and you know, and when they had the wherewithal, they'd come in and settle up with it. But sometimes I think he carried them also. He always, when I worked for him, Charlie always had big cars. He had Nashes and Packards and things like that. But when the White Sox first got their night lighting, and I think it was about the 3rd home game that they had under the lights, I know Charlie took us guys that were working at A&P store at that time and some other ones, we went up to the White Sox game. That was really something, to see a night game of that, because they were one of the first ones in the area that lights.
That was really his only extravaganza, was he liked a heavy car.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he did
Right.
not eat high off the hog, believe me. This was all at his disposal.
He did tell me, though, I probably told me that he wanted a Packard, and that was the thing he set his sight on. That was, and when he got that, he was really happy. And then he gave it to Kenny at the end.
Get a green one.
Kenny Marion, yeah. We had a green one going. The green one was gray to start with. They had green, they was Kenny.
Did you say he won a Packard?
No, he wanted.
Oh, wanted.
That was his
Oh,
thing he wanted.
Well, that was the top of the line.
At that
Oh,
time.
yeah, right, yeah.
And on Sundays, he would go to church, and he and my mother, and they would take him to the Zelmsons or someplace to get in the big car and drive to Winchester. What's the name of the restaurant?
Tebow.
No.
No, oh, I'm sorry.
This was farther.
Fairwell.
Naps.
yeah, Bill Daps or something.
Bill Naps,
Bill
right.
Naps, Bill
And then there
Naps.
was another one that had cheese. I want to say One Shooters, is that right?
Yeah.
And that was their
Yeah.
their entertainment, you know, instead of playing golf or going bowling, they took a ride in the car and had dinner out. And they'd come home and take everybody home. Watch the news and go to bed, I guess, I don't know.
We always had Marion to ask for ice cream.
Yeah.
Dad's favorite. I remember one time we were going through Dyer, and there's a sweet shop there, and we went in for ice cream cone. Everybody ordered ice cream. My mother stayed in the car, my dad and Don and I. They were all out of ice cream cone. I ordered a sundae. This was during the Depression. He didn't turn me down, but I had to stay there and eat it while they went
Banana
out.
split.
Yeah, Charlie, it was a
Banana
banana
split.
split.
He paid me back for it. Everybody that worked for my dad went on a cruise. Everybody. Didn't. I never went on a cruise.
You didn't? I didn't know
They
that.
gave you a ride though, they gave you a Don boat to ride to Glenwood, remember that time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I was in the car.
You started crying and
That was in the Packard.
He's gonna take us.
I was crying, I said, don't do that, don't do that.
They
They
had a
packed
pillow fight.
suitcases and everything.
That was, we thought that was a reform school. It was a training,
Glenwood manual training, that's Glenwood manual
Yeah,
training.
we got it up to the gate.
we got right to the gate and I'll tell you, it's a long day.
I don't know what you've done.
Well, tell them what you did,
Oh,
you had a
we did.
pillow fight,
Yeah, pillow all over.
pillows, feathers all over your mother's house.
That's Charlie that way.
He had a bad habit of taking things up to bed and somebody took up a banana and ate the banana and threw the peeling in the husk. And we were all lined up to get our mouths washed out with soap. And then when it got to me, then he fessed up. Been my friend ever since. My mother was the disciplinarian, she really was. She had, this is the one that got the jockey crop. And she was an ear puller too. I'm surprised they still have ears.
Mine are the normal side.
She called me to the house one day and I thought, oh my, what did I do? I did something wrong, I was sure I did something wrong. I was trying to think, what could I have done? And she sat me down and she gave me a homemade quilt. You know, it was very touching.
You really made a lot of quilts.
Yeah.
Yes, she gave me a
Homemade quilt.
I think something like 18. 18
How many years did you work there already?
33.
Oh.
She took over the bookkeeping back
Oh, I, you're right, your mother.
then. Yes.
And she had a
taught
good
you
hand,
well.
she had a good
She did.
handwriting.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
She liked to write.
Yeah.
And, Adeline, what did you do at the store?
I call myself Jack of all trades.
Uh-huh.
I do the shows, I see, and
You can still do it too,
I worked in the deli and if they needed somebody to check out, I'd check out, and I was just all over, more or less doing anything I had to.
Uh-huh.
Well, Mr. Seehausen would sing to us in German when we would put up the cereal. And he wanted to open the boxes because when the boys did, they cut all the boxes. So he wanted to open those boxes. And then he would sing to us.
Folks still have the box, the guns gestolen.
Hey, Charlie, tell them where our cereal was in the A&P store. Pardon? Tell them where the cereals were in the A&P store.
Sure.
You gotta take them all off, you know, with
The
hooks.
sticks.
Yeah.
When we get a load in, then all the toilet paper would be on the top shelf. Either Skinny would be on the tops, and I'd throw them at him, or I would be on top. And we would let it go, boy. The toilet paper all over it. A lot of fun.
He always did make it lots of fun.
Who else worked for the, so you were, right? What did you do at the store? Both of you?
I did a lot of things, I mostly staffed. And the thing I remember most, I worked mostly for Don and Charlie. I remember, they always closed on Sunday, which was pretty special. But then we'd stack on some night, Tuesday nights, the store would be closed, we'd stack. Charlie'd have about 5 of us in there, and we'd jam the floor with stuff and put it off, and then about 9 o'clock, then we'd quit, and then he'd let us in the deli. And that was pretty good. We'd eat our, everybody could go in there, eat whatever they wanted, and that, so.
And you were always closed on Sunday?
All the time.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
I don't know when they, we were all married on a Sunday, we couldn't get married on a Saturday.
That's right.
Who else worked there? Lori, you know?
Yeah, I did, and I was listening to Adeline. I always thought I was hired as a checker, but I always loved to be able to go and work someplace else. You know, if I could go on the produce, learn how to wrap the lettuce or the tomatoes, or go back in the deli. Barb Poppy was always back there. I remember making melon balls till my arms hurt, you know, and doing stuff like that. But I always thought it was fun to get out and do something different. Stocking the shelf, that was always a big deal, you know. And Saturday still was the big day when I was there, and we had, I don't know, how many registers were there? Were there 5 there? 5, and they were always full on Saturdays, and there were always plenty of girls, and they were always very accommodating to our schedule, you know, all through high school and going to college. They always managed to make it work so that you got as many hours as you could and make the money you needed to and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And the other thing that I remembered, Don mentioned Kenny. My earliest memory of Seehausen was going in there, and he always had a sucker for me. You know, whenever I go past the
This is
department,
Kenny Marion.
Kenny Marion, yeah. He always had one of those little dumb suckers for you.
Well, I used to work on Friday nights, and of course you check the bills that came in. Well, I'd go through the calculator on it, but before I would send it home, I would add it myself to be sure the calculator was right. I'm like your mother. I love to add. She thought you were all well.
And Tim, you work there?
I had a near miss. Mr. Seehausen thought he hired me, but he hired my younger brother who was taller than I was. My brother's probably about 13 or 14 when he was working at the store, which is pretty young. But he said, oh, you know, I've already got you here. I'm not going to let you go. So he kept him on there. And every time my brother got $5 in his pocket, he used that to go and take a flying lesson out at Sanger International Airport. And he's a pilot today.
Wow. And Fred, you work there?
I worked there about 9 years altogether, from 55 to 61. And then, like Alan did, I worked at nights unloading the trucks and stocking the shelves. And as he mentioned, when we would eat at night, well, Chuck always would make us what he called buffalo burgers, I think. Yeah, that's right. Raw beef.
Oh, yeah.
I still do that. That was good. And I started out, just as was mentioned, first job I had there was getting on the floor with these 300 or 400 pounds of potatoes. And this scooper, we put them in 10-pound bags then, so I had to have 10-pound bags. The most fun was finding the rotten ones. And getting those out of there, you know? Or the banana boxes with the tarantulas spiders in them.
Oh, yeah.
We had a couple of those.
They told us that.
I don't know, I never saw
I never
one.
found one. I went through a lot of them. But see, we hired him because he looked like a Seahawk.
I was adopted. Remember, Freddie was always going to school.
Yeah.
Going to school. Are you still going to school, Freddie?
Yes. They're going to school.
You're going to school.
Yeah. Bean counter, I think Chuck called me. Back then, you go to college to learn how to count beans. But there was, the truck that used to come up, I don't know, was it Alabama, with the watermelons. And we had this regular assembly line, you know, one catch it and throw it to the next and load it back. And Max Langbartels and Norman Benzing. Remember around 4th of July one time, Max studied. And Norman put one of his whistle bombs in his engine. And when we all stood and watched when the store closed, and Max went out to his car and turned it on, and boom! The car started going off. Smoke came out all over. He comes running out of the car, stuttering, rolling on the ground. He thought he was on fire. Everybody's laughing. Oh, then Charlie was good to our congregation. The house, you mentioned Stagey house, he donated to the congregation and moved it. We just had to put the basement in everything, and we just sold it last month. Whenever there was a funeral, he provided the ham for the funeral. At Christmas time, he provided different things for the bags. This was all no charge. At the end of the year, when we were short on money,